Hi, my name is Jack Davis, and for my Threads of Time assignment, I chose power and structure for my theme to look at throughout this project. Initially, I chose this as I thought we would be looking at one site through the lens of power and structure through the semester, and I was really interested in the Mayan Tikal site as being from Guatemala. I really wanted to understand more about, a little about the history, as well as how exactly has power and structure really had an impact on the design um, of the Mayan Tikal sites. So, looking at the first week and the first uh, design option, the Tikal Stela 16, this was a portrait of a Mayan king, and this was all about showing power through design. So, this would have been a high level of craft stone carving showing um, of course, the ruler of the Mayan civilization, but also showing in high level of detail jewelry, ceremonial clothing, staff, headdresses, all that show power of this civilization, and really trying to show that the rulers of these civilizations are like gods, and really trying to create a power and structure dynamic that really elevates the Mayan civilization from others, at least to me. Looking at then the Tikal Temple 5, which is the most famous temple on this historic site, this is using power and structure to create a hierarchy. So this temple is so steep and so large that it really feels like someone is standing over you, that you are an ant compared to this temple. And that really is all by design because the steepness of these steps ensures that this is a very hard climb to do, that not everyone can do this climb. And really, it's about power and structure of the inner hierarchy of the civilization, as really the elites or those brave enough to climb were granted access to be at the top, whereas everyone else who wasn't either brave enough or one of the elites wasn't deemed worthy enough to be up there. So again, power and structure, the hierarchy within this civilization. And when you go to the next, which is week 4, design and power, this is really about how the environment really had a way and how they use the environment um, to create power for their civilization. So, as we know, the Mayans were really great at navigating the stars. They have the most infamous calendar, the Mayan calendar, which was based and plotted upon the stars, the sun's movement, as well as the solstices and equinox, which they used to show their power. Many of the temple's locations on this site is actually in a reference to the days of the solstices as well as the equinox, as they would use this information of the stars to kind of create a power that they were kind of that they knew all, that they knew the secrets of the universe, because they were able to use the solstice and equinox to know when was it time to collect the crops, when is it time to plant new crops. Rulers would use the solstices and equinox to display their power or to secure their power, as they would use these events to show that this is a sign from the gods that we are either in the right or that they are the most beloved civilization. Really, just using this to secure the civilization's power, but also again about securing power for individuals. The next week is really about looking at power and structure through a different lens. This is an apartment complex in the Bronx, which typically, when thinking of power and structure and who does this typical design favor, it really would favor those wealthy in New York who were able to buy real estate there. Typically, these apartments are super expensive, and this breaks the mold because these apartments are actually for individuals who are displaced by the foster system, as well as individuals who have a hard time taking care of themselves. Really, not the typical uh, average New York or Bronx renter that comes in mind. And this is how do we use power and structure to benefit those who really don't benefit from the traditional society's power and structure. These are typically individuals who, when they age out of the system, really things they don't go their way. They don't have reliable housing. They're having then to worry about housing, about a job, or potentially pursuing their education. Here it's about let's eliminate that concern for these individuals. That way they can focus on improving their lives, which really breaks from traditional power and structure modules of really the American real estate, I guess. Kind of looking here with mortuary polls, it was about how is power and structure represented when you die. And here is it's about these mortuary polls were um, used by Native American tribes as ways to remember former clans, chiefs, or high ranking individuals, and they were made by the successors of those individuals. So, a tribute to the power and structure of maybe the old guard having the newer and younger members, and those who will be the future kind of replacing those was really, really interesting to see. Um, and lastly, with this universal design aspect, this is again power and structure breaking away from the traditional norms. So, typically, kind of in New York, yes, you do have a lot of green parks, but you also do have some private parks that really do separate the elites and their spaces from the general public. And you kind of look at this little island in New York, and it kind of first looks at like one of those elite parks that really only a certain few have access to, when in reality this wasn't made for just the individuals in the surrounding area, but it was made for all to enjoy a green space in New York, reclaim more land that potentially the city could use, but also just providing a space for everyone, which is typically within power and structure we haven't seen. Overall, throughout this semester, it has been great to learn about each project, each story, and within the first 4 weeks, it was really great to see and build off of each week with looking at the TCAL site, looking at how, first we go small with the craftsmanship of that and how that represents power, to larger structure, to really then the cosmic design of and how environment was used to help build this shape and power of the Mayan civilization. And then it was great also to break from that norm and look at different examples from a modern time on either how power and structure is used in its typical sense, or kind of with my examples how it's used in a non-typical way. Overall, I think I've learned a lot about really looking at how architecture is architecture, or are certain buildings that maybe I've never noticed before, are they using power and structure to separate an us and them, or are they using power and structure to maybe promote cohesion, promote inclusivity? Overall, it has been a great semester and a really great project, just looking through the lens of how we use design.